Hi there and welcome back. In this video, I'm putting together week 9 in my 2022 Project Life album. For this spread, I'm going to be using the March Studio Calico Documenter Kit from 2022. I always start my page by printing and cropping all of my photos and then going ahead and laying them out. I actually did not have a lot of photos this week, so what I ended up doing was pulling a few photos that actually came from the week before and the week after that really just kind of happened around this time and putting them in this spread because it doesn't really matter that much that they end up in the right spread. And really, I just want to get those stories told in my album. Then I'm going through the Studio Calico kit and selecting all of the cards. The first thing I do is want to have something designated for every pocket. These kits come with so many cards, especially the 3x4 cards. So when I'm going through them, I'm kind of sorting them into stacks based on cards that I don't think I could use this week and journaling, filler, patterns, and just kind of getting an idea of what cards are available. You can see there I have that yellow sticky note that I was referencing. That is where I write down all of these stories that I want to tell so that when I'm going through the cards and putting my spread together, I can reference that and see if any of the card prompts make sense for the pockets and stories I want to tell. I put that today was a good day card on that photo of Pumpkin because I plan to cut that card up and use it to embellish that photo. I tend to cut up a lot of the cards, especially because these kits come with so many cards. I would never be able to use them all up otherwise. And so that gives me a few more embellishment options and a better way to use up all of my stash. Once I have decided all of the cards and I have something designated for each pocket, I'm going ahead and putting those back into the pouch that the kit came in. And now I'm working on the rest of the spread and just embellishing and putting it together. So what I'm doing first is cropping down some just plain white cardstock. What I decided is that I'm going to cut out that card and use it to create a journaling card, but I'll get to that later. First, I'm going to work on my title card here. For my title card, I almost always use my rolling date stamp to add the dates for the week. And then I'm using those wood veneer months this year in all of my spreads from Studio Calico, which I am planning on doing the first week of every month to have some consistency throughout my album. This right here is a technique that I've used before. When there are these sentiment cards, I like to cut them into strips and then use them as an embellishment on a photo or on a journaling card. It just gets more use out of my cards, especially because when I have so many things I want to include, those filler cards tend to get overlooked and not used. And this way I'm able to put a story in the pocket rather than just a filler card, but still use that product that I really enjoy. So next step is going through the embellishments and figuring out how to embellish the various pockets. The kit came with these vellum stars, which I absolutely love. So I went to them first and I decided that I wanted to use this entire pack up on this spread. So I have in the past had a tendency to use only a few of an embellishment and then the remainder of them end up in my stash and they sit there forever. And I really didn't want that to be the case here. So what I decided to do was just put these on pretty much every card because there are so many that came in the kit. But I came up with a few different ways to include them. And that's kind of just what I'm doing here. I'm going through them and deciding kind of where they make sense and to put them in the spread. So you can see here I have this photo. These are two photos my daughter took of her prom dress that she picked out. She actually had picked it out the week prior, so these photos were from last week, but they didn't make it into that spread because she didn't give them to me until later, so that's why I'm putting them this week. And I put two of those 3x4 photos of her on a 4x6 canvas in Photoshop Elements before printing it out. And that way I'm able to embellish right along the center there with those stars, which I thought looked really fun. And I was able to include more photos in the 4x6 pockets because I had more vertical photos this week. This card right here is just a filler card from the kit. As I said at the beginning of the video, I didn't have a ton of photos and stories to include, so that gives me a chance to use more of those filler cards. And what I was able to do was just add some of those stars on there to make it kind of my own. And I'm just going through and adding a little bit of rolling adhesive on all of these stars. And then in a bit, what I'm going to do is go over to my sewing machine and stitch all of these down. But first, I'm just kind of going through and getting everything set up. So this card right here, I'm going to tell the story of the Allie Edwards Brand Ambassador Program that is new this year. So last year I was on the creative team, and this year they have decided to switch to the Brand Ambassador Program, and it was announced during this week. So I just took the promo image and I'm using that on this card here, and I cut down a journaling card that I'm using as a base where I'm going to journal a bit about the program later. This card right here that said doing it all, I really liked that card, but I didn't want it to be a filler card. So what I'm doing is I cut out the sentiment and I'm creating my own journaling card on this white cardstock here. I also trimmed down some of the background so that I could put a strip of it across the bottom there and kind of ground the card a little bit. And of course, I'm adding 2 of those starburst shapes because I'm adding them to pretty much every card on this spread. Then what I'm doing is using another piece of white cardstock just to adhere this photo of my daughter and a filler card together here, because even though they're both 3x4 items, they're going to go into a 4x6 pocket. So they need something to kind of hold them in place. Here I have a photo of my dinner one night, so I just am adding these stars. Again, just trying to use them all up on this spread. And there's just so many of them. So the kit also had these alpha stickers in it, so I decided I wanted to use them on this screenshot of a Zoom call with my Marco Polo friends. And so what I decided to do, because these alphas were too dark on that black background, was I just added a strip of white washi tape on there, which kind of ends up looking like vellum. And I used that as a base to add on there. I think I wrote Crafty Zoom, maybe Crafty Zoom Friends, or no, Crafty Friends Zoom. That's what I ended up writing on there with these alpha stickers. I really love this font of alpha stickers. They're newer to Studio Calico, and I just like the shape of them. So I was happy to include that. I got those in the kit and to include them here. And then I'm, of course, adhering some stars. Because I used those alphas there, I am going to want to use them again in my spread, because I typically like to use any sort of embellishment. I like to use it in at least 2 pockets so that it coordinates across the spread and everything kind of goes together a little bit better. So you can see here now, I used up all of the stars, and what I'm doing is just taking everything over to my sewing machine and stitching down those stars. And then after I stitch them, I have a little process that's kind of repetitive, but basically what I'm doing is I pull the thread through to the back, trim it off, and then tape it down just with Scotch tape onto the back of the card. And that just holds it in place without having to worry about stitching back and forth on the sewing machine or having knots or anything like that on my cards. And then, of course, I'm trimming off the stars and everything that hang off the end. So I always want to trim them after I stitch it, because when you run it through the sewing machine, sometimes things shift a little bit, and this way it'll be trimmed perfectly to the edge of the card. I love to use my sewing machine in my scrapbook, as you probably know if you've watched any of my videos. So this is just a process that I do very regularly on my spreads, but this one I definitely stitched almost every single pocket, which I think is pretty fun. I also created my own filler card there with those 3 half circles that were in the kit, and I added one of the vellum stars on there and stitched it down. I accidentally did that one in a zigzag stitch, which happened to work out, but my sewing machine, I had just left it on zigzag stitch from another project and totally forgot before I started stitching. So I'm just going through still and adhering all of these down. It's a pretty tedious process, honestly, but I wanted to just kind of show you everything. And of course, I put it on super fast forward so it doesn't take too long, but just so you can kind of see how the whole spread comes together. And while I'm doing this, I am thinking through what I'm going to do next and how I'm going to embellish these clusters going forward after I finish with my stitching and the stars. So the next step in the process is to add some more embellishments. So the kit came with these yellow word phrase strips. So I'm just kind of looking over them and trying to find which ones match and add them to some of the stars. It also came with those chipboard cameras, which I decided not to use, and then these chipboard circles, which I did put away here, but I do end up using one of them later on that sushi photo. But otherwise, I'm really kind of creating these embellishment clusters with the vellum stars, stitching, and these word phrase strips. Once I do that, I decide that it needs just one more thing. So I do go to my stash and pull out some puffy stars that I'm going to add to some of the embellishment clusters. And as you can see there, I rearranged a couple of those cards. I just like to balance the spread a little bit more between the dark and the light and the photos and the filler, and just kind of make sure that everything looks good together. So here I decided I really wanted something on that center star, and that's where I decided to bring these these letter stickers in again and write out the word prom dress. I really love how this card came out, and I love that I moved the Zoom call card to the other page so that the two places that these stickers show up are on two separate pages, not next to each other. So here's those puffy stars, and unfortunately my camera is going to cut off here in a moment because my phone died, but I will pop back on and give you an overview of the completed page. Thankfully, you really didn't miss that much, just this last embellishing and my journaling. Hey guys, so my phone died while filming this process, and I didn't notice. So I finished the spread, but I was pretty much done. I just was putting on these stars that I had pulled out from my stash. So once I finished everything with the kit, I felt like it needed something a little bit extra of puffiness. So I found these in my stash and they coordinated perfectly. So I went and added them to a lot of the cards. I added my journaling. I just covered this one with a sticky note because I feel like I'm not supposed to share some of the stuff I wrote here. But you'll be able to see how that card came out in the photos on my Instagram when I blur it out. And then here I added a chipboard piece just to add something a little bit more. But I hope that you enjoyed this. I'm just going to go ahead and put everything in the pockets. This spread, I think, came together really easily, just like a lot of my other ones, because I was working from a kit. This was one of my favorite Studio Calico kits in a while. I really loved those vellum stars, and I was very happy I was able to use them all up during this spread. So one thing that I have found is that I tend to not use up a lot of my supplies. And this year, working from a kit, one of my goals is to really make sure I'm using the supplies that I'm buying. One thing that I am finding is that the Studio Calico kits come with just so many cards that I'm not able to use them all on one spread. And I really need to use that kit on more than one spread for it to not just pile up in my stash. So I think later this month, I'm going to do a stash busting spread, and potentially, instead of doing like mix and match from my actual stash, I'm just going to use pieces of what is left from this kit that I created this page with. But stay tuned for that. I will share that later when I get to it. For now, I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. Thank you.